Hello, hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. James here, as ever, for today's video, all about the ACCA Advanced Taxation paper. That's the P6 exam, where we're going to walk and talk you through the key exam topics that you must know for your exam in order to pass. Well, you're in safe hands today because I have Richard Paul, who's joining me, who is a top ACCA Advanced Taxation tutor, and he's with us today on the call and going to take us through all of those key areas. So, Richard, feel free to introduce yourself, my friend.
So, yes, my name is Richard Paul. I am an online tutor at FME Learn Online. I've been a tutor since 2006. That scares me, how many years that is. So, yeah, 2006. So I was a tutor at Kaplan for 10 years, and then for the last 7 years or 6-7 years, I've sort of spent my time looking after students online, and also do bits of sort of classroom teaching as well, across anything to do with sort of financial reporting, tax and audit, but mainly focusing on sort of tax these days online. So that's my main focus.
Rock and roll, Richard. That's all sweet. Yeah. Well, what I've done for everyone who's tuning in today as well, I've put all of Richard's details in the description below. So check it out down there, along with any relevant texts and resources we refer to in the video. But let's get straight into it. If you haven't already, pen and paper at the ready. These are the fundamentals that you need to know to pass your advanced taxation exam. So kick us off, Richard. The first fundamental key topic area to you is...
Well, so I suppose the syllabus breaks down into seven main taxes. So I'll start with, I think, capital gains tax. I think in terms of capital gains tax, the main area, as an ex-marker and as someone who marks scripts regularly and sees students submit things, capital gains tax, reliefs, okay, understanding the difference between a deferral relief and an exemption relief is commonly misunderstood. I think when students see the number of reliefs there are out there, they get a bit sort of stressed and don't know where to start. But actually once you understand how a deferral relief works and how you understand how an exemption relief works, fundamentally they are very similar in their treatments. Having said that, I don't want to play it down, because it is important that students do understand that, for example, different assets qualify for rollover relief, different assets qualify for gift relief, different assets qualify for, I nearly said entrepreneurs relief there, business asset disposal relief, etc. And you know, there are lots of different reliefs out there, and things like, you know, you've got PPR, which is again specifically to do with your main residence. So my main thing I tend to see is students who either don't know the assets, don't know the conditions, or don't know the difference between an exemption relief or a deferral relief.
Yeah, so what I should have said at the start of this video, it's all going to come flooding back to me from my days of doing the advanced taxation paper on here, where from exactly what you've just talked us through there, analysing the scenario, understanding the types of assets, and also, are we dealing with a basic rate taxpayer, higher rate as well, which links into what percentage we're going to charge on that.
Absolutely, yeah, spot on, and that's perfect, James. In terms of understanding, once you've actually then worked out the gain, then making sure you understand how it then feeds into the income tax position. That's a really important point. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, spot on. And also for the transparency of the channel and the video, for anyone who hasn't watched my other video about how to pass the advanced tax paper, I am openly admitting to I actually failed it. So it's all going to come flooding back to me today, Richard, on there. Capital gains tax was always, get me a pro forma. What are all the options that have come up in the past? What type of assets? How we valued it? And then coming down to how much have we got a chargeable gain or loss on there?
Absolutely. And again, tying in with that, when we get to corporation tax, the understanding the differences in the way the gains are worked out between capital gains tax and income tax, and understanding things like indexation is there for corporation tax but not there for capital gains tax, etc.
Yeah.
They're just those small differences that do make a difference, but that again just comes through question practice.
Yeah. Oh, and it's definitely something I wanted to highlight in this video when we're walking and talking it through. The details, the specifics as well. If we've got a student who's watching this who's failed advanced taxation before, that was the difference in me passing it on there from what we've just talked through. But you've got to, the devil is in the detail. You've got to know all those little adjustments and rules. That's where it could be the difference.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So that's capital gains tax. Yeah.
Okay, what are we going for next? That's the first one.
So I think it dovetails nicely into inheritance tax because that's the other capital tax. So again, understanding business property relief. There aren't many reliefs in inheritance tax, but you do need to understand what is a relief that's available in lifetime, and what's a relief that's available when the person dies, and sort of the main relief that's equivalent to those kind of those capital gains tax relief. BPR has those similar types of conditions that are again different for a different tax, and then you also need to understand the kind of like you just said a minute ago, James, is very pro forma driven, these two taxes, making sure we understand the kind of the annual exemptions that can come off and the marriage exemptions that can come off in life, but then the taxes that the reliefs that are then available in life and on death. So inheritance tax, again, there's a common theme here. It sounds like I'm saying a lot, but actually I'm saying one thing, which is understand your reliefs for CGT and IHT. So I don't want to sort of stress people out with always saying a lot of things all at once. Actually, I'm just saying know your reliefs. That's the simple thing of what I'm saying here.
Honestly, you just got to go through it like a little process in your head, and I always found that asking yourself questions about the scenario, saying, oh, have they already claimed that relief? Have they actually already had that? And these are the questions you've got to ask yourself when you're in that exam situation, and that's where you're going to accumulate the marks.
Definitely spot
on there. The other thing I thought that helped me with some of the reliefs was actually drawing a timeline down to actually, especially with inheritance tax on there, with the 7-year rule and working my years back. That was a little game changer. Where I know with the CBE platform now, if you do it in the center, you can have a bit of scrap paper. That for me, when I'm more of a visual learner, made such a difference on there.
Definitely, and I think what confuses students with the 7 years, of course, is that when you come to die, it's all very cheerful, this isn't it? Effectively the 7 years back from death, but then when you do the nil rate band count back, you can almost go back another 7 years. So people can't often get their head around the fact that there's almost 14 years in play, but you need to understand which 7 years you're talking about. That's really, really key.
Yeah, and picturing that scenario amongst all those details and what's and don't think it's going to be a scenario that it's all rosy nosy. It's a case of it's based on real world application. And what would you do if you're in that tax position and you had to advise someone?
Yeah, and what you've just said there, James, about drawing it is so useful, because it is when you actually start to draw events down on a timeline, that's so useful in tax generally, just to kind of see when things happen. That's a really good bit of advice there.
I can just feel through the camera the pen and papers and the notes going down for people watching this. But moving on to the next one, Richard, what are we thinking for the third key area?
So I'll move on to a different tax now, go to corporation tax. And I think one that's changed a bit over the years, but is so important for an exam, is R&D, understanding the difference between when you're dealing with a small and medium-sized company, when you're dealing with a large company. That's so important to understand, because actually the differences are quite major in terms of the way you actually apply them. But again, the key thing I'd say with advanced tax is, yes, I'm talking about rules here, but I always say to my students, and it's a bit of a strange one, but in terms of the numbers, don't focus on the numbers, make sure that you focus on the words. And there's a lot of things that can be said that are common between the two types of R&D relief, and the discussion is the absolutely crucial thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, and if you're umming and ahhing over should it apply, can we actually take that into account, just pop it down as to try and justify it, talk to the marker, don't just leave a figure on there. All these sort of things can build into it.
Absolutely. And whenever I'm marking, I see blank space, I just think, you don't have to be the best at tax to be brilliant at this. You just have to say something about the topic, because imagine you're talking to a client. A client doesn't want to know that, for want of a better word, the phrase, the rocket science. They want to know, if you're going to describe rollover relief to someone, you first of all need to describe what is capital gains tax, what is a gain, what is proceeds, what is cost. Okay, now we'll get on to the hard stuff. But by that point, you've got 4 marks just from stating those 4 points. And that's what people forget, is they say the advanced word and they think they always have to write difficult stuff. But so much of it is just state the basics.
Oh, I wish I'd have heard that, especially when I failed it the first time, because I used to go back through some of the answers and just miss out on 2 to 3 easy points. And that was my big technique that I did on my second attempt. Just I've got an 8-mark question here. on R&D, where are the first two easy marks that I've seen in basic questions before, and then we go into the specifics from there. You know, what year does it fall in? What are the implications?
Yeah, and one of the things you say there is so important about the model answer, because the model answers, they are there to give you every single eventuality. And what I spend most of my life saying to my students is, this is how you win a prize. To actually pass, you just have to say this, this, and this. And so much of those model answers are terrifying, but to have them broken down slowly and easily and just say, here, if you say this, this, and this, you passed, forget the other 5 marks. Yes, if you want to win a prize, fantastic. But most of us just want to kind of get to the pass mark line.
I think that's that. Yeah. Oh, so he's getting so excited, everyone. It's the R&D has taken over on us. He's back now. It's okay. We've still got you, Richard.
Did
Everyone,
I go there?
everyone's panicking on the recording, saying, "No, James, I need to hear the other topics." Don't worry, we've got this.
Yeah.
What we thinking? What we thinking for the fourth one?
So
moving on to corporation.
Going for income tax next,
Cool.
and thinking about sort of adjustments to profit, and just understanding that you know, again, a lot of the adjustments to profit things that you may have to sort of talk about. Again, it's a little bit more of a TX area, but certainly being able to advise a client of the implication of what an adjustment to profit does to profit, both for income tax, and 99% of the rules are the same for corporation tax. Yes, there are some differences, like you don't take account of private use in corporation tax and things like that, but most of what you do is the same. So kind of just knowing your basic TX stuff to be able to advise a client around how to, you know, how a certain adjustment to profit does affect things can be really useful.
Oh, 100%. And for all the sort of visual learners out there, even just drawing a timeline out as to say, right, what tax year am I in? What's the company year end? Have I got an extended period of account? Is it an 18-month period on there? Just little things like that can just settle the nerves in an exam to say, right, I think I know where this is going, and then just work it through line by line. You become a lot more settled, because the exam itself is so time pressured on there.
Absolutely.
Amongst all these other things we're talking about today, you've got to juggle.
Yeah, definitely.
On there, right? We've done income tax on there, amongst all the different rates and everything, and allowances and all the other rules.
There's so much you could say in there about income tax. I mean, but I think what I want to steer away the deal from is too much of the detail, because I think people do spend too much time worrying about the individual rates, worrying about the individual numbers. Now, the amount of times I get things from questions from students when they've looked at an advanced tax question, and they'll say, why, when this person's earned this extra income, haven't they taken the personal allowance off? And I need to explain, well, this is additional income. So they've already had the personal allowance taken off the income before. So a lot of what you're doing in advanced tax is working on the margin. So you're working on the extra bit of income, or the extra bit of gain, or the extra bit of this. So actually, students, by keeping it more simple and saying this person's a higher rate taxpayer, so all of this income is at, you know, 20% income tax, etc., and the same with corporation tax, the same with capital gains. Actually, if you step away and don't get bogged down in those TX details, you actually tend to write much more of a kind of ATAX answer.
Oh, definitely. Amongst also, I always found it hard to picture myself in that situation, because let's face it, I was a accounts junior, part qualified, you know, just going through this. So trying to picture that I am a sole trader, or I've got limited company myself with a full-time income and then other bits on top. You need to just start to picture that you are in that scenario, and that is you. And then say, right, is it individual? Is it a company? Am I UK? Am I overseas? All the rest of it. And again, it's those questions that you've got to start asking yourself.
Definitely. And I suppose the other one I'd tag into income tax is residence. I think that's a big one that people struggle with, because when we're thinking about residence, there are the kind of 3 rules. You know, are you UK automatic resident? Are you overseas automatic resident? And then going into the ties test. And actually, you look at that, and there's a lot of detail. But just even like you said earlier, James, just being able to state the basics, to say this is where they sit from a UK automatic basis, this is where, and just knowing the basics of the rules can get you a lot of marks on on residents, and then understanding the difference between the fact that if you are dealing with someone who is resident but not domiciled, then effectively you have that kind of that remittance basis that's available, and just understanding that that's basically the difference between putting all the income in the pot, or deciding the remittance basis where you do what it says on the tin. You just put in the pot what has been remitted to the UK, and just you know, little things like that, just understanding the basics of those, not the detail necessarily, can get you a lot of marks in this paper.
Yeah. And to add to that, you're absolutely spot on. The communication to the marker and how it's laid out as well, and how it should flow, and if you made any assumptions, all these little things, it would just add up and add up and add up, and it'll be the difference of once you start doing that, your marks will accumulate, along with understanding all of these key topic areas, because advanced taxation, as we all know, is the thickest book that we have to offer. It's the biggest doorstop on there, isn't it?
I'm quite relieved these days, because most of the stuff that I receive is either in some kind of PDF form or whatever. And actually, I received the FA22 book the other day that I'm about to start updating. And you're right, James. It scares me as a tutor who's done it for 17 years. So it's a student who gets it, who's brand new to the subject, must just be like, wow, there's a lot in here. You know?
It's a marathon and not a sprint, Richard. That's what I always say. Not to scare anyone today, but what's the next key topic area for us to focus in on?
Topic.
Which one are we thinking? Oh my gosh, I think he's still there, everyone. And we're back, everyone. I've got him. I could not let you finish the video, Richard. Sorry about that, everyone who's tuning in, but we're going to get straight back into those key topics now. Richard is fully with us with the key topic areas. So walk and talk us through, Richard. What are the remaining ones that the guys have got to get down in the notes?
Yeah, so I think VAT will be my next choice, and going down the line of there's lots of stuff you learn at TX in VAT, but the ones that jump out to me straight away is the ones you need to be on top of are land and buildings. You need to understand how land and buildings are treated. And simply understand really the commercial building rules that when they're less than 3 years old, they're standard rated, and once they tick over into that more than 3-year rule, they become exempt, and that basically means you don't charge VAT on them. And so the key thing they're wanting you to say in most advanced tax questions is, I would suggest that potentially an option to tax is something that you can do, which then allows you effectively to be able to treat it as standard rated going forward. Now, the reason that's important is because if someone's bought an older building, one that's more than 3 years old, if it's standard rated and they want to do it up and stuff, they can reclaim the VAT on the good stuff that they're about to do, all the renovations. However, you need to keep your eye on the end game, which is at some point you're going to have to sell it, and when you have to sell it, you may well then have to add VAT at the end. And indeed, that then may make if you're selling it to someone who can't reclaim that VAT back, like an individual, you've just made a building that's, say, £1 million, £1.2 million to actually sell, which makes it more expensive. And again, if you're renting it out in that intervening period between when you do it up and when you sell it, you may well have to add 20% VAT to the rent, which then basically means that if you're dealing again with individuals who can't claim that VAT back, last night they had a rent bill of £1,000, suddenly they've got a rent bill of £1,200, so effectively 20% more expensive. So it's a really important area. Just, I've said lots and lots and lots there, but actually, even if you can just say 1 or 2 of the 10 things I said in that bit, you're going to pick up a shed load of marks. It's such a key area.
Yeah, it's also highlighting for this exam, maybe if it's someone's first sitting who's watching this recording, it's not just a case of what lots of people think, oh, it's a tax exam, lots of calculations. It's the calculations and then explaining what it means in practice to a client. That is what it is. So if you think you're going to pass this exam with just calculations,
absolutely
not a chance on that. So definitely pop that down in the notes as well. Along with that, and thinking, have we got a UK company, UK individual? Try and picture the scenario of what is happening. Also works really well for me on there.
Absolutely, and I'll give you an example of a student who had got 40% several times and came to me, and they said to me, "What's your advice?" Thinking I was going to say, learn this, learn this, learn this. And my 2 bits of advice to them were: buy a clock, buy a watch, and of course, And they said that effectively the second thing is write, don't do the numbers. And she ended up getting 62% in the next sitting. And that's just because she stuck to the clock and did the basics well. And so it's like, you're absolutely right, James. It's not about the detail. It's just about keeping moving, sticking to the clock, answering everything, etc.
Oh, absolutely spot on. I mean, that gives us a big tick on that on there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what are we thinking on the next one? What have we got down next?
So the two smaller areas now, but they are areas where you can score quickly in the sense of national insurance, just understanding how national insurance impacts either someone who's employed, class 1, class 1A, or someone who's self-employed, class 2, class 4. And you're not going to have to do the TX kind of well, you might have to do a little bit of a computation like in TX, but more the ATAX slant they tend to take is this person is a higher rate taxpayer and they're earning this amount of money more and they're employed or whatever. They want you to know that that is 2%, etc. And so a lot of this is just taken out of the tables, which you'll get you effectively have in the exam. So again, what I'm talking like when I was saying earlier, we're working on the margins. It's a bit of a case of just saying how much more are they earning and effectively applying the correct NIC rate. But again, not getting bogged down in doing 100 calculations on NIC like you're doing TX, because unfortunately numbers are quite capped in advanced tax because they want you to, as James mentioned earlier, add value. They don't want you to do all the stuff a computer can do. You can stick £60,000 into a computer and say what's NIC and it'll tell you, but actually to tell somebody if you earn 20,000 more you're going to have an extra rate of 2% actually tells them, oh okay, I've got to work out 2% of this additional amount of earnings or whatever. So it's that extra stuff that's really, really important.
I hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely, that you got a picture, you're at that stage. And again, if you want to just write a small little timeline on it, that used to have £0 at one end, and we're talking old school now, pen and paper. But it was like there's literally writing down the brackets, and when it went to 12 to 2, and for someone who's listening in today, that could be the difference of another 2 to 3 marks in the exam. That it just settles you down. I get what's going on here, and I know what it means if it was me in that situation.
Definitely. And again, on those timelines, you can put class 1 primary, class 1 secondary, and class 4 virtually side by side, because most of the rates, not quite all of them, but most of them are identical. So I always, when I'm teaching it in class or teaching online, draw a little picture of a kind of a diving tank or a test tube or something, just to kind of give the idea it doesn't have a hole at the bottom, and say, here are all the bands going up, and I literally list them side by side. So that's absolutely spot on, James. Any of these little tricks like doing timelines are brilliant for students.
Just to help picture it on there. And then what's our final topic area?
So small one, stamp duty, and normally it comes up in the form of something. There are only really 2 forms of stamp duty, one on land and buildings and one on buying shares. And the typical one you're going to score very, very quickly on in the exam is someone's bought some shares, the buyer will pay 0.5% on those shares, half a mark to a mark straight away, easy mark. And yes, stamp duty, I've underplayed it slightly. It gets a little bit more fiddly than that, but this isn't here to tell you the technical stuff necessarily. It's just to tell you what is the key stuff in each tax to know. And I'd say that's the most important part of stamp duty to score quickly on. But yes, there are other things I'd recommend you look at, but that's the bit, that's the easy one.
Oh, we've covered all the chunky areas, but then even so in this exam, what I found was there's still little elements, 1 or 2 mark bits where you go, the syllabus is so wide, there's probably going to be bits on there that you've not heard that little rule, or you've not read it in that sort of scenario in that particular way. So I'd say to add to that as well, from all these key topic areas, there's probably going to be something on the exam that might just throw you off as well.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of those in there, and it's really just a case of staying calm and remembering you've just got to get that 50% and not getting bogged down in those scary those bits they throw in that are tricky. Absolutely, James. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Richard, is there any other key things that for the key topic areas you thought you've got to mention to the guys today that it'll be fundamental for their exam to help them get that pass?
Well, I'll talk to you separate, James, about kind of my top tips on a separate recording. But I think certainly key things that I would say with regard to just the kind of the clerical side of things. Make sure you book on the right stream when you go into the exam. So make sure you're booking your UK stream. And probably one bit of advice that I will also talk about on tips is the way to pass this exam is to get your timing right and to get your planning right. If you do that right and you steer away from the hard stuff, you'll pass. Simple as that.
Absolutely spot on. If you haven't watched that video on the top tips, I'll link it below and at the end of this video. The only other final bit will be the professional skills marks that are coming into play. And I'm right in thinking, is that from the first sitting is June 2023?
Spot on, James. Yeah, absolutely. So that's something just to be on your toes for, in the sense that if you're thinking of sitting to March or to June and it's a kind of toss up, don't forget that March is the last sitting of Finance Act 21. June is the first sitting of Finance Act 22 and the new professional mark scheme. So you need to make sure that you've done tuition with the tutor focusing on the right things, because if you do a course to March 23, you're not going to understand the new professional mark scheme. You're not going to understand the new Finance Act that kicks in from the June 23 sitting. So that's a really good heads up, James.
Exactly. Yeah, spot on. And the new books that you'd have to get, and the new changes, and the rest of it on there.
That's why I love being a tax tutor. I have to rewrite everything every 4 sittings, James. Wonderful. Yeah.
Well, I must say, Richard, thank you so much for your time today, sharing those insights and those key topics and tips as well. I've put all your details below. Have enjoyed your debut on the channel.
It's been amazing, James. Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me, and you know, anything we can do, just small little things that can get the students that extra 2-3 marks to get them over, that get them with that score with a 5 on the front. It's just amazing. So wonderful work.
Absolutely spot on, and I'm sure if the guys follow these tips amongst with all the other resources, and I put, as I said, your details down below, it'll be a 50+, a lovely sangria, and feet up after a tax exam maybe on there.
Wonderful, living the dream.
That'll be all right. Exactly. Well, if you have enjoyed today's video, guys, which I hope you have, be sure to give it a massive like on the video, subscribe, the button will be below. And if you have any questions, and I love saying this on the videos, Richard and I will really appreciate it. Let us know in the comments how you get on with your exam, how you get on with the marks, little tips, did you put them into play? And we'll make sure we reply to them down there. It'd be great to hear from you, wouldn't you say, Richard, on that?
Absolutely, yeah. Always love questions. Always love helping students. No, please ask away. And James and I are here to help you, definitely.
Fantastic. I'll leave you a comment wishing you well for the updating of the notes for 4 sittings. It'll be all right.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, on that bombshell, guys, we will see you next time. Cheers.